Amen. Good evening, Resonate. It's good to be here with you guys. Good Thanksgiving? Yeah? Everybody I had a good Thanksgiving, but I'm glad to be back here in Missoula and back here worshiping with you guys. Like Taylor said, today we are finishing this series, Relational Redemption. We've been here 11 weeks. This is the 11th week of this series, and we've spanned the whole range of human relationships with the goal of seeing what God has to say about them. So we've talked about friendship, singleness, dating, marriage, conflict, sex, parenting, lots of things in between, and today we are finishing this series by talking about mentors. So let me start with a story. In 1869, an 11-year-old boy was sent on a trip to his uncle's house in the Adirondack Mountains by his parents. He was a sickly boy, he was asthmatic, he was nearsighted, he was weak, and when the boy arrived at his family cabin, he met his uncle Robert. Now, Robert was a tough outdoorsman, he was an athlete, he was a conservation activist, and Robert took one look at his frail nephew and decided he would not allow his nephew to stay weak. And so Robert instituted a strict regimen of mentorship and training. The boy was forced to row heavy boats on a lake, Moosehead Lake, until his hands bled and his asthma almost killed him. The boy was taught to shoot and track and skin animals and sleep outside in the sub-zero weather. The boy was taught how to barter and negotiate and debate and hold your ground without being overwhelmed or offended. He was taught that real men use their strength not for vanity but for service to the public good. And the transformation in that boy was astonishing. Over the next decade, the boy continued this regimen, and he added competitive sports, boxing, wrestling, horseback riding, weightlifting. By the time he entered Harvard, about 10 years later, he was a national collegiate boxing champion, and he was a master outdoorsman. And this boy, he soon entered politics, and he rose through the ranks of the Republican Party, and eventually became the 26th president of the United States. Does anybody know who I might be talking about? Teddy Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt. Here he is, grown man. The values and the ideals that were instilled in Teddy Roosevelt from his uncle Robert Roosevelt led to the U.S. National Park System, the Forest Service, the protection of 230 million acres of American land. Robert's mentorship created the man who charged up San Juan Hill, who built the Panama Canal, and who saved the Grand Canyon. Without his mentor, Teddy would have likely stayed a bedridden invalid, but because of his mentor, he changed the course of our nation's history. I'm sure that almost everybody in here can think of a season in your life when you were significantly affected by a mentor. Mentorship is a natural part of healthy human relationships, and it's part of how God designed human generations to interact with each other. So here's a definition right off the bat. Mentorship is a developmental relationship in which one person actively helps another grow in maturity or competence. That's a broad definition. Mentorship is crucial for our development, physically, emotionally, mentally, but maybe more than anything, mentorship is important for our spiritual development. And that's because spiritual growth doesn't happen in isolation. God designed human beings to function in relationship with other people. And so today, as I talk about mentorship, I want to talk about the three types of mentors that God has designed us for. Three types of mentors God has designed us for. I learned this framework from one of my mentors, a man named Keith Evans, and I want to teach it to you all today. Each of these three types of mentors plays an irreplaceable role in sharpening us into the image of Christ. So three types of mentors. Number one, this is on your note sheet, this should be the first blank. Number one is peers. The first type of mentors are peers, the sharpening mentors. Now, this first group is one that we don't often even think of in terms of mentors, because we sometimes think mentors are exclusively someone older. But the group of developmental relationships that the Bible actually talks about the most is the development that comes from your peers. So Proverbs talks about this all over the place, the mutual challenge and improvement that peers offer you. We just read Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. Earlier that chapter in verse 6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but profuse are the kisses of an enemy. When a friend clashes against you, that is a good thing. It is a faithful thing. In many of the Apostle Paul's letters, he talks about the benefits that come from peer relationships. Romans 1, verse 11, he says, for I long to see you that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another, build one another up, just as you are doing. Hebrews 3:13, exhort one another every day, as long as it is called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Hebrews 10:24, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, but encouraging one another. Finally, Colossians 3:16, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts. Over and over, we see that encouragement and challenge and partnership from your peers is one of the most important factors in our spiritual growth. Peers are people who are roughly the same life stage as you, the same maturity as you. So they're running alongside you. They're not way ahead of you, and they're not way behind you. Peers can see your blind spots in real time. A good peer will be honest enough to confront you, and they will be humble enough to be confronted by you. And if you don't have peers around you, you kind of become this Lone Ranger Christian. You start to think that you're more mature than you really are, and worst of all, you lose the joy of your Christian race because we are running this race together. And so here's one more important part. You need these peers in your life consistently. In your physical life. These need to be actual people who live in your city, go to your church, people that you see daily, ideally, but at worst, weekly. You need to be able to see these people consistently. In the Bible, we see these relationships between people like David and Jonathan. They were best friends, and they encouraged each other through really hard times. Peter and Paul were prominent leaders together in Jerusalem. They even had sharp conflict at times to sharpen one another. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were all teenage boys who were sent to Babylon together, and then they stood up against Babylonian tyranny together. They encouraged one another. Mary and Elizabeth, they were both miraculously pregnant at the same time and could encourage one another. Those are just a few examples. In my life, I've been amazingly blessed by peers, all the way back to my high school days. But today, when I think of my peers, I think of men like our elders here at our church, Jared Dethridge and Ben Otsby and Alex Robinson. I think about guys like Brian Jones or Austin Luke, who I've been ministering alongside of for close to a decade now. Most importantly, I think of my wife, who I've been with for 7.5 years. These people are my best friends. They're my greatest encouragements. They're my most effective sharpeners. So I hope all of you can find a group of peers who can do that for you as well. There's no better place to find this type of friendship than in the church. So you're in the perfect spot. So here's an illustration we're going to build throughout this sermon. This is the mentorship triangle. That's the name I made up. The first and biggest layer that you need is a layer of peers. You need peers around you. Now let's move on to the second type of mentor. Number 2, the second type is older siblings. Older sibling mentors. This is not biological siblings necessarily. It's more spiritual siblings. These are the guiding mentors. These are people who are just 1 or 2 life stages ahead of you. Okay, so like 3 to 10 years generally ahead of you. These are people who are still in the game. They're still raising kids. They're still leading their church small group. They're still fighting sin daily, which means that they are close enough to what you're going through that they still remember. That's the benefit that you get there. If you're dating, you have a dating question, and you go to an older sibling mentor to ask that question, they still remember when they were dating. They still remember what that was like. They know what it's like nowadays to date with today's dating apps and today's culture. They know what it's like. I don't know if you've ever tried to ask like an 80 or 90-year-old some dating advice. Their advice is crazy usually. Well, I just took a wheelbarrow of crops to my neighbor and I asked if I could, have his daughter as my wife. And it doesn't connect to anything that's going on in our world today. They don't remember what happened 60 years ago, and the world has changed so much in those years that the direct practical advice is often not going to be as applicable. The older sibling is only 1 life stage ahead. So they've made the mistakes that you're about to make. They can say, I've been there. Here's how you can get through this. They model how to walk with God when things get hard. They don't just tell you what you should do. They show you what you should do with their life. You can look at their life right now. In Titus 2, Paul commands the older men to teach the younger men to be self-controlled and dignified and steadfast. He commands the older women to teach the younger women to be devoted to their husbands and children, to work at home, and to be pure. We see these kinds of relationships frequently in the Bible. Barnabas mentored Paul when Paul was young in his faith. Priscilla and Aquila mentored the young preacher Apollos in the book of Acts. Jethro gave practical leadership advice to Moses as he led the Israelite people through the desert. Ananias was a mature disciple in Damascus who mentored the new convert Saul. We see it over and over. Now with peers, remember back to the bottom layer of the triangle, with peers, it is vital that they be in your life consistently, physically. With older sibling mentors, that dynamic starts to change. So it's still helpful to get time with them occasionally, but you don't have to be in each other's lives all the time. When you even look at the biblical examples, the relationships consisted more of sporadic touch points than constant interaction. They can provide guidance and resourcing and advice from a distance, especially in today's world of technology. We have the ability to have these mentors at a distance that they never had in Bible times. In my life, here's a couple guys I think of, guys I've tremendously benefited from as older brothers to me. Matthew Young was my pastor when I was a student at Resonate Moscow. He's still the pastor over in Moscow. He's been in ministry about a decade longer than me. His kids are well into their teenage years. Me and Matthew have a 30-minute phone call every 2 or 3 weeks, and he helps me through all kinds of ministry situations or anything that I'm working on. Tyler Marines, he also lives in Idaho. He's about 5 years older than me. He has 5 kids, ranging from 2 to 8. He's an elder in his church. He has an engineering career. He's leading in his community. And so I call or email Tyler probably every couple months with a parenting question or a church question or something like that. And then one more guy, a guy named Jordan Nelson. He also lives in Idaho. He's about 10 years older than me. He has 4 kids. He's a leader in his church, and he's a huge theology nerd. And so every couple months, I get on the phone with Jordan and just really talk through a hairy theological problem that I've been trying to work out. So those are 3 older brother mentors that have been instrumental in my life. But none of them live in Missoula. I don't see any of them on a daily basis. My only contact with them is sporadic. It's over the phone unless I'm traveling for some reason. So let's keep building the mentorship triangle as we move up to the final type. We have older siblings here. We move up to the final type, are parents. Parent mentors. Again, not necessarily biological parents. These are spiritual parents. These are the long view mentors. There are people who are decades ahead, like 20 to 50 years ahead. They have finished many of the races that you are now running. They can see the big picture. They can speak with perspective that nobody else has. They can provide context and history to help you break out of your generational trends. In 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul says, "For though you have countless guides in Christ, you do not have many fathers. For I became your father in Christ Jesus through the gospel." So countless guides. Those are the older brothers. You're going to have quite a few of them in your life. But there's an important category beyond the guides. There's an important category, which is the spiritual mothers and fathers. Again, the Bible's full of these types of spiritual parents. Paul mentored and wrote letters to young Timothy as he led a church in Ephesus. Mordecai gave wisdom and courage to Esther. The prophet Nathan mentored young King David. Moses mentored and encouraged Joshua before Joshua took over as the leader of the Israelites. Elijah mentored Elisha before he passed the torch to him. In fact, in 2 Timothy, Paul talks about how Timothy actually learned the Christian faith from his biological mother and grandmother. That's where his faith came from. So if you think through those biblical examples, one of the things that you'll notice is almost all of them are mentorship from a distance. They're mentorship from a distance. They're not in each other's lives daily because they are both living independent, productive lives. They're communicating through letters or through messengers or something like that. And so I really want you to see this trend. I'm pounding on it again and again for a reason. Here's the trend I hope you're picking up. With peer mentors, in-person is vital. It's vital. You have to have these peers around you. They need to be in your life consistently and physically. With older sibling mentors, in-person is helpful, but not necessary. It's helpful, but it's not necessary. And with parent mentors, in-person is relatively inconsequential. Whether they're there or not, it doesn't make that much of a difference. It's not bad for them to be in person, but it's totally normal to have them at a distance. In our technological age, this is especially true. When Paul was parenting, when he was a parenting mentor to Timothy, they could only communicate every few months or every couple of years through a letter sent by a human messenger. Today, any mentor in the world is one phone call away. You could have a mentor on the opposite side of the country and be on a Zoom call with them in minutes. The other thing that our technological age allows for is for us to learn from and receive wisdom from people that we've never met through things like books or sermons or lessons. The greatest wisdom in history is in the Missoula Public Library, just waiting for you to access it. The greatest wisdom in all of history. When I think about the parenting mentors in my life, there's a few who stand out. First, my parents and my grandparents have been a great source of mentorship to me over the years. In my pastoral job, my mentor is a man named Keith Evans that I mentioned earlier. He was a pastor in Portland for about 35 years. He lives in Pullman now, and I'm on the phone with Keith a couple times a month talking about some pastoral situation, getting wisdom from him. The other two that stand out to me as I was thinking through this are men that I have never met before. John Piper and C.S. Lewis are parenting mentors to me. John Piper is a pastor. He's an author. He's a theologian up in Minneapolis. He has shaped my view of God more than anyone else in the world through his writing, through his preaching, so much so that I named my daughter after him. That's where my daughter got her name, from John Piper. The other one is C.S. Lewis, one of the most brilliant Christian apologists in church history, has significantly shaped the way that I think. So it's like John Piper has shaped what I think. C.S. Lewis has shaped how I think. That's why I quote C.S. Lewis in almost every sermon. His thoughts are the way that I think. And so on that note, here's C.S. Lewis talking about why it's vital to read broadly, to consume broadly, especially of people in different eras and different contexts. Lewis says, "My own eyes are not enough for me. I will see through those of others. In reading great literature, I become 1,000 men and yet remain myself. Like the night sky in the Greek poem, I see with a myriad eyes, but it is still I who see." So through reading, you can retrieve the great wisdom of the ages from people that you will only ever meet in heaven. So as you grow as a Christian, you should be on the lookout for older spiritual parents, and you should be eager to learn from the wisdom of the past. Let's finish up our mentorship triangle here with fathers and mothers, parents. So first, at the bottom, you need a bunch of peers who are in your life consistently, in the trenches beside you, holding you accountable, encouraging you, pushing you forward. And then you need some older siblings, people who are 1 or 2 stages ahead of you, still in the game. They can give practical advice on whatever you're dealing with. And last, you need a couple spiritual parents who can give you outside wisdom and an objective viewpoint, either through a phone call or an email or through reading a book. So there's a mentorship triangle. Let me close here by giving you 3 encouragements for you all based on both my own journey with mentors in my life and then helping hundreds of people develop this triangle in their own lives. 3 encouragements for you guys. Number 1, focus on the peers first. Focus on the peers first. Some of you, especially if you are early in college or you're young in your faith, you probably don't have your triangle fully built. That's totally fine. This takes years to build those relationships. But as you're starting out, focus on the base of the triangle first. Build a strong group of peers. It's the most practical, the most immediate, the most crucial type of mentorship. If you think about the early church, all that they had were peers, right? They were all just in it together, figuring it out together. And as the church grew over the decades, they developed those other layers of mentorship, but their foundation was a strong group of peers. And so build that base first. And if you're here at Resonate, then I have really good news for you. There is no better place in the world to build a base of peers than at a church that highly values community. Like you're in the gold mine right now. You are standing in the gold mine. Take advantage of it. Start investing deeply in the friends around you. They will probably become your best friends for the rest of your life. So focus on peers first. Second encouragement, never trade in-person peers for in-person parents. Never trade in-person peers for in-person parents. This is one that I've learned through much pain and heartache over the years. Let me just name the elephant in the room so that you all know that I'm well aware of it. We are a young church. We're a very young church. Our church membership ranges from 17 to 37. That's the age range of our membership. We do not have seniors or retirees in our church yet. Our church is 6 years old. Our church started on the university campus, so we have a very high density of thriving, healthy community within that 2-decade span, which is something that almost no other church has. And we have a vacancy at the top, which almost no other church has. Like, I don't know if you've been to most other churches, but it's mostly gray hair, which is awesome, but it's different than what you see in Resonate. And so I'm aware of this challenge. But because of this challenge, I have seen many people who sense that the top of their triangle is incomplete, and they think that the solution is to leave the bottom two sections in search of the top. They leave the bottom, and that trade almost never goes well. Like we've already talked about, the only category that absolutely must be in person is the peer category. And so you should do whatever it takes to keep that category in person. And then, if you sense that your spiritual parent category is weak, there are a ton of ways to strengthen it without leaving your best friends. You can join a community Bible study. You could start volunteering at Christian nonprofits in your city. You could read books and listen to sermons. You could rekindle relationships with people that you used to be close to. There are lots of ways to strengthen the peak of your triangle without leaving behind the foundation of your triangle. And so if you're feeling that pressure in Resonate, come talk to me. I would love to help you find a parent mentor that you can call and meet with and talk to occasionally. Never trade in-person peers for in-person parents. And number three, third encouragement, as you grow, build a triangle beneath you as well. Build one beneath you. When you are 18, you're at the bottom of the pyramid. As you grow, you need to gradually develop layers underneath you. You need to become a mentor, not just have mentors. So as you develop into greater and greater maturity, your triangle actually becomes kind of diamond-shaped. It becomes like this type of shape. Hopefully, yeah, there we have it. You add a layer underneath you of younger brothers and sisters, younger siblings. And then at some point, you add another layer of sons and daughters, spiritual children. Now, when you look at this whole diamond, that's a lot of relationships. And so depending on your age, your maturity, different layers of this diamond might be stronger than others. If you are younger and less mature, the layers above you should probably be stronger. The older and the more mature you get, the layers beneath you ought to be stronger. So if you're, like to get practical, if you are 18 and you're pretty new to the faith, you probably don't have very many younger siblings or spiritual children mentees. And that's a good thing. Okay? You don't have a lot of layers underneath you, but someday you will. My great-grandma is still alive, living in Missoula. She's 97 years old. She has no mentors. Okay? She's at the very top. There is no one older or wise. She has been walking with Jesus for 90 plus years. No mentors, but generations of layers underneath her. So this diamond is going to change depending on your life stage. As you grow, as you get older, as you mature, it's going to change. But it should help us to see the type of mentor and mentee relationships that God has made us for. So as you grow, build a triangle beneath you as well. It's my prayer that all of us would develop strong and healthy relationships with the mentors above us and the mentees below us, that we may disciple and be discipled just as Jesus commands. Would you guys pray with me? And then I want to do something a little bit unique tonight. God, I thank you for this evening. Thank you for the chance to gather with your people and talk about your design for mentorship. God, I thank you that you didn't leave us to run this Christian race alone, but that you've sent brothers and sisters in front of us, mothers and fathers in front of us to guide us, to give us wisdom, to show us the way. God, thank you for the technological advances that allow us to glean wisdom from all over the world through all of history right at our fingertips. Man, what a blessing that most people in history did not have, and we often take for granted. God, thank you for that blessing. And I pray we'd lean into the mentors that we do have, and God, as we age and mature, would you give us the sense of responsibility to become mentors for those who are younger, those who are behind us a little ways. God, we thank you for this time together. We praise you for your Son. We praise you for what he's done for us. God, bless this conversation we're about to have as well. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Well, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to invite my friend Brian Jones up here. Would you give it up for Brian? So Brian has been, he's been a good friend of mine for a long time. Brian has been a mentor of mine in various layers, as a peer, as an older brother in different seasons. And I've watched Brian invest in various relationships in his own life, both mentors of his and then mentees of his. And so I just want to get Brian's voice on this topic. I thought, I'll talk for 20 minutes and then let you talk for 15 or 20 minutes, and that'll be better than me talking for 40. So I got a stool for you. pull this up. Brian, maybe start out, a lot of these people know you, but some of them might not. Give me a quick introduction in case somebody doesn't know you.
My name's Brian. I have a significant impact on the average age of this church. I'm 35. I know, I'm stretching us. Yes, I'm married to the lovely Mallory Jones. We have two little boys, Van and Jack. I'm on staff with Resonate Church. I have been for going on to my 13th year on staff with Resonate. Joined right out of college as an intern, and then a missionary, a multiplier. I helped to build Elevate for a while, and now I serve as our collegiate director for the church. So, I love living in Missoula. This is like God called me here in 2018 with a few people, and then Preston came the year after that to save me. We had a lot of people to lead and not enough people to lead them. So been here ever since.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if you go to Elevate, Brian's one of the original masterminds of the whole thing, so you should give him credit if you had a great time. Brian, so can you put the diamond shape back up here on the screen? Brian, as you look at this, the diamond illustration here, and you think about those categories, this is the first time you're seeing this, but how do those land to you? When I talk through that, does it seem like those categories ring true? Can you map them onto your life? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I want to mention first with peers. This is so critical that we talked about this in I preached a sermon on friendship weeks ago. And you can have friends in college, and you'll just, share things in life together. You'll go through them together. But with a peer who is a mentor, you will go through them together, and you will challenge each other as you go. You'll dig into each other, you'll learn, and you'll remind each other of what you've gone through. And there's a big difference in those. And what Preston's talking about in this group, you'll see the significance as those people, like you mentioned in the scriptures, sharpen you. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge one. And look at your friendships and make sure that they're not just friendships, but mentorship. And then with the older siblings, I'll talk about this a little more in a minute, but the older siblings in life, when you're going through something, you have to have a reference point. If they're not right there in front of you, I can think about so many times in my life where there was an older sibling who had gone through something, and I thought to myself, what did they do when they got here? Mm-hmm. And it was so helpful. So to have that kind of mentorship is really important. And then, man, this top part of the triangle is critical, as Preston mentioned. And I think we all have this person probably in the back of our mind, but they're the person that's not just a step ahead of you, like you mentioned, but they've gone through so much life that they just ooze wisdom. And it's like if you're anxious about something and you sit with this person, they'll say, oh, I remember that years ago. Right. And they have got to this sense of ease where now they see God's perspective on that thing that had them in some sort of anxiousness or pressure, and they now see the truth behind what it's like to go through it. You need those kind of people to actually bring you back to God's significant control, His will, His goodness over your life. So all three of those are really important, and they do serve different purposes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's so good. I can think of so many times when I'm in the mess, I'm in the situation, and when you're really in it, you're often clouded by emotions or the stress or the chaos of the situation, and you sit down with somebody who's been through it and they're a little bit outside, and they can just bring so much clarity and perspective. That's what those parents provide. That's really good. Brian, why do you think it's so, I made the claim pretty strongly that it is vital for peers to be in person. Do you agree? And if so, why is that so important?
Huge. A peer is definitely not someone you follow on social media and see the stories of their life play out, but you actually are with them in the story of their life playing out. That's a big difference there. In our wedding, my wife's vows, she said, I promise to push you back to the men who made you who you are. And it wasn't people that I followed online. Those weren't the men that she was talking about. In fact, I could literally feel it when she said it. There were men standing right behind me who had gone through some of the most critical parts of my life with me in person up to that point, and they were standing there for that reason, because they had made me. and that my wife was wise enough to know they made me who I am. And the person she gets to marry me is not a result of my own just brilliance.
Right.
It's these guys standing behind me that have literally carried me through some significant seasons and sharpened me. So, and just another story on that. Just very recently, I'm 35 years old, and I have some peers in my life that are incredibly sharpening. But Mal and I were gone. We've been gone for 6 weeks. We missed you guys so much. It's so good to see you again. But while we were gone, we have some friends who came to see us in Phoenix. Matt and him, a daughter Witch, and they brought their boys, Luca and Milo. We happen to have two boys like the same age right now. It was the most chaotic friend trip ever because they're little and crazy and they scream the whole time. But there's a few moments where like Mal and Emma got away and me and Matt got away on our own to do something for a little bit. And just the level of sharpening and intentionality in those, like that little bit of time was so critical for me, having been gone for that long, because Matt has spent so much time in person with me. He's going through the same things as me right now with his kids and his marriage. And he could ask me questions that I was critically examining in my own self right now to a degree that no one that hasn't lived close to me or has been away from me, they couldn't dig into me like that. So it's super crucial to have those friends in your life.
Yeah, those peers actually, when I get on the phone with somebody, I can kind of tell them whatever version of the story I want. And if I wanted to make up a fabricated story, I easily could. With your peers, you can't do that because they see you every day. You can't make up a fake story. So it's so helpful to have them in your life, seeing it, and you get to see them. Yeah, that's good. Tell me about the upper part of your triangle. Give me, you're a good storyteller, so tell me about one or two older siblings and one or two parents, it's kind of spiritual parent mentors in your life. Like, what are those relationships? What do they look like? How often do you talk to them? What do you talk to them about? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I'll talk about older sibling first. This is really significant for me because on my journey with Jesus, I started out kind of just riding solo for a while. Me and some peers were doing things together, and I don't know how it's been for you guys as early on in your walk with Jesus, but doing it with your peers is helpful, but doing it with a mentor who is sort of like a sibling parent is incredibly helpful. Because they can not just say, I don't know either. They can say, like, I've been through that. I just went through that, and let me help you through it. So right out of college, I never really had a significant relationship like that, like in person, day to day. And I met a guy named Drew Worsham. He was one of the original pastors at Resonate Church, who started the church at Washington State University. And the guy just took me under his wing, like right when I showed up to work for Resonate. And I didn't just see him in meetings. I didn't just see him like here and there, like weekly, but he would invite me into his home to have dinner with him. He would ask me questions. He invited me to travel with him when he needed to travel. We did some significant stuff together, and it was the constancy of me like being in the same room with him or listening to how he was having a conversation with me that made me think, I want to be like that. That's what I want to be like. Like, this is the kind of person that I want to be and become, and it was intoxicating. So much so that I would see Drew like meet someone for the first time, and I would remember being mesmerized with the way that he would enter the conversation. He was more interested in that person, every single person that he would interact with, than I've ever been interested in anyone in my life. And it taught me how to deeply love people, which is something that people around me get to experience. I've been a significant part of a lot of people's lives. They would call me their closest friend or one of their closest friends because I learned what Drew did. And he was doing something that is so important. Hear me say this. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11, he says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. What's he saying there? He's saying you're not going to get to walk with Jesus right now, but I know him. I know him. I'm trying my best to follow him and become like him. You can imitate me because that's where I'm going. And I knew Drew was going there. I knew that was the direction of his life. So every time he did something, I knew it was pointed and oriented in the direction of who Jesus is. he was my Christ-like true north. So so important to have that. I think you can get aspects of that in your peers, but not nearly as close as you can with a mentor like that.
Yeah, that's good. What about a parent? And
then parent. So I said I never had like a really close big brother, but right when I decided to follow Jesus, there was a significant moment where I feel like God was speaking to me over some pretty significant sin in my life. And I was working at a summer camp, and a man walked up to me while I was at this camp. And I was a Christian camp, and I'd sort of faked my way into working there as my relationship with Christ was in shambles. And he was so direct with me. The guy was in his way further on in life than me. He was in his mid-30s, and I was like 18 years old. And he saw me do something, I think leading a class or something. He walked up to me afterwards. He said, "Brian, can I talk to you for a minute?" He walked out on this balcony, and he says, "Hey, I just want to know, do you know Jesus?" I was like, I just taught about him. I was just teaching these kids about him. And no one had ever had the boldness to do that with me. He was so bold and so direct. It was like he was fearless to say anything. But up until that point, no one had asked me a deep question of that significance that was direct and saw straight through me. But Clinton's prayer life and the way he was living his life was so significant. He had the sensitivity to see what I was saying and see through it and see who I really was. Yeah. And we interacted every summer for about 4 summers. So I'd only see him in the summer in my college career. And it was like a gold mine when I could get around him. He had the audacity to invite me the next summer back into a big leadership position, and I was like, not the guy for the job. And he saw me through all of my failure and my mistakes, and he spoke truth to me, and he made me a leader. I don't think that I was a leader. And he took me, picked me up, and like literally showed me how to do everything, how to interact with people, how to pray, spiritual disciplines. And I was like, I couldn't wait to get back to that next summer. Throughout my life, in the biggest moments or crossroads of my life, he's been my first call. Yeah. I'll call my parents, or I'll call Clinton. Yeah. And it's this sense of discernment is the reason I call him. Right. Hey, I've heard, I'm going through this thing right now. This is typically how the conversation goes. I'm going through this thing, and I'll explain the situation. And someone has said this to me. I read this. I'm reading a book about this. Clinton, what do you think? And I could always know that he is going to give me age-old wisdom, lived through wisdom. When I went through that wisdom, here's what God showed me in that season of my life. And here's what I know now, that season's far, far away. Right. And he's my first call. And then my parents. I don't know what your relationship is like with your parents, but I have Christian parents who have been Christians their whole life. So all of their decisions are on like they're in such a sensitivity to having been Christians their whole life and obeying Christ. Right. Whether it's like how they bought their house, how they raised us, myself and my brothers, how they manage their finances, what they watch, what they listen to, has all been filtered through this allegiance to Christ over everything else. And I think it's been their allegiance that has taught me so much over time that now even if I call them, we don't talk about anything significant, I get off of the call and I tell myself, oh, that makes so much sense now that I'm there. I see how your allegiance and your lordship has played out through your life, and I want to be like that. Right. So, yeah, those
that's
are
so good. Yeah, the perspective that older generation gives is so helpful. Okay, last question for you, Brian. As you have grown and you've matured, how has your view of mentorship changed, or how has your interaction with mentors had to change?
Yeah, I'm heavily, I think where I used to be heavily dependent on older siblings. Drew, I was so dependent on just knowing what to do by watching him and praying with him. And I'm in a season of my life now where I'm incredibly dependent on peers. I'm 35 years old. There aren't many people who are in this city, and there haven't been for a long time, to be completely honest, that were older than me that I was like walking with and following.
Mm-hmm.
So there are friends in this room that I can see that Preston, I've been friends with Preston for probably 12 years now, and he's seen me through every significant season of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yourself, Preston, there's 2 Prestons in this room, and this happens every time I talk. Preston and I have gone back and forth about some really heavy things that we just disagreed on.
Mm-hmm.
And could have had the potential to send us separate ways.
Right.
And God has used Preston in my life to sharpen me in such a significant way that people would probably think it's miraculous that we're sitting here together had they been in those conversations.
Right.
But peer mentorship is critical to lean into the people that God has placed in your life because he's done it for a reason, so I'm heavily dependent. My journey has been so weird. God gave me a lot of people to lead,
Mm-hmm.
and now my diamond is getting kind of out of control. To where the peers that I walk with, the people that I've led, now they have their own peers, and then they are looking up to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people that are 3 generations below me that have reached out to me. So what was once a triangle is definitely now a diamond in my life. And I see the significance sort of both ways. But yeah, as the older you get, like the friendships you have right now, I just want to say this, people you're sitting next to, if you're in school or now out of school, you'll know this even more so, but lean into them. Because in 10 years, when you need that person who's going to know everything about you, like you're developing that relationship right now if you're in college. So be the person that sharpens the other person.
Yeah. And that's so helpful to hear you talk about. You've been in seasons where the top of you were top heavy on the diamond. Most of your relationships were up there, and then as you've matured, it became kind of bottom heavy. That's where most of your relationships are now. I think that's the perfect model. That's how God intended it to be. You become more of a mentor to other people than you are a mentee to those above you.
And I'll add on to that too.
Yep.
That there's a significance in that. That's for a reason. Happens for a reason. That doesn't happen in every environment. You might just go to your parents your whole life because that's just the mentor that you know. There's nothing wrong with that. But in this culture, in this church, what you'll sense and see is that our ambition is not just to grow up in this room. It's to invite people into our lives and grow up together. We're a missionary people. When you see someone who's lost or broken, it's your responsibility to invite them in, and then they become a peer to you. That's how this church grows, is through a missionary movement, and eventually you're going to have more people you're leading, more people you are taking responsibility for than you have time to just go get help. You have to grow up and lead people. And that's going to make you a better leader, a stronger disciple than that constancy, that need from other people. Eventually, it's time to give. And there's no greater fulfillment than that. Like, it's the best thing in the world to pour your lives into others.
Yeah. That's why having a kid is one of the best maturing processes in the world, because now somebody needs you all the time, no breaks. You don't get to say, I can't do it today. So you're kind of forced into being responsible. That's good. Well, Brian, thank you so much for sharing, for all your wisdom, for your stories. It's always fun to hear. Would you pray for us as we close? I'm going to invite Ben to come up and close us in worship.